House Republicans are demanding that the Department of Justice hand over the transcripts of special counsel Robert Hur's interview with President Biden, really our only long-form look into the president's mental capacity. That's after the release of that bombshell report last week. But the administration refusing to play ball. I wonder why. Here's White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre a short time ago.
Why won't the White House commit to releasing even a redacted version of the transcripts if it has classified information?
And I'm not saying that we're not committing. I'm saying that they're looking at it. I'm saying that they, meaning the White House counsel's office, is looking at it. I just don't have anything to share with you at this time. It is not a no and it is not a yes. It is, we are looking at this. There's processes, there's protocols, and they're looking through that.
Processes, protocol, and then there's the continual forgetting of the president, which could be a reason they don't want the transcript out. Meanwhile, there are growing calls for the president to take a cognitive test during his upcoming physical. But according to the White House yesterday, the president's physician says there is no need.
Does the White House think that the idea of the president taking a cognition test, a cognitive test, as a part of this physical is a legitimate idea?
The president proves every day how he operates, how he thinks, right? But by dealing with world leaders, by making really difficult decisions on behalf of the American people, whether it's domestic, whether it's national security. And so he shows it every day on how he thinks, how he operates. And so that is how the Dr. O'Connor sees it, and that's how I'm going to leave it.
He also talks to dead world leaders. We heard that last week twice. And while concerns grow over President Biden's ability to serve, Vice President Kamala Harris wants voters to know she's ready to lead the nation, telling the Wall Street Journal, "I am ready to serve." There's no question about that. And Brian Kilmeade is very reassured with that headline.
Absolutely. And let me start with the first question. When is it time to release the transcripts? Well, what happened over the weekend? All the surrogates went out to say Robert Hur's incompetent, he's a political hack, and said horrible things about him, including Bob Bauer, the attorney who was in the room for all 7 hours, both those days of his interview. And he says, that is not how I remember it. And Margaret Brennan said, okay, maybe we should just hear the tapes and we can make our decision. He goes, well, that's not my call. He goes, well, you're his attorney. What would you recommend? He goes, well, we'll see what happens. You can't call Robert Hur incompetent and a political hack, and at the same time know the tapes are out there that we can make our own decisions, and then have it both ways and hold those tapes back. It's not going to fly, and they should worry about what they got themselves into.
They should. Kellyanne, they do have quite the defenders in the liberal press. Let's take a listen. Thou doth protest too much. Watch.
President Biden, who I've been around numerous times just in this last year, is sharp, he's focused, he's bright.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
This is a man who is sharp, who is on top of his game, who knows what's going on.
He's smart, he's on his game.
I was in almost every meeting, and the president was in front of and on top of it all, coordinating and directing leaders who are in charge of America's national security, not to mention our allies around the globe.
Coordinating.
It's the first. Speaking of coordinating, they all have the soundbite, sharp, focused.
Sharp, yeah.
Yes, he's there. Look, I used to think that Kamala Harris was like the most ridiculous personnel decision ever. And I wrote in the New York Times in an op-ed last Monday talking about who Trump should pick as VP that looking back, it was pretty brilliant of Joe Biden to choose Kamala Harris because he essentially chose one of 3 people in the entire country who could not upstage him. And I don't even know who the other 2 are. It just sounds good. I think she's the best job security for Joe Biden. I sent him another shipment of fresh fruit and vitamins just this morning. I'm scared to death of her as being president. And if you think I'm alone, look at the NBC News poll, Kaylee. Last week, it was terrible for Biden, but the one person less popular than Joe Biden was Kamala Harris. Hey, folks, that's not sexism and racism. That's eyesight and hearing. And serious point, a vote for Joe Biden this time is absolutely a vote for Kamala Harris, not as his VP for the next 4 years, but basically perhaps her for the next 12 years. And I have one major objection with Kamala Harris. It has nothing to do with ideology. It has to do with having worked in that White House for 4 years. The needs of this country are so deep and so great. And you feel like you can never, ever do enough. You can never get ahead of them. This woman has turned the vice presidency of the United States into a no-show job. Go look at her public schedule. Most days now, it says, quote, there is nothing on the vice president's public schedule today. Those are scary 10 words, my friends. And if she has anything on that, it's the presidential daily brief, which is slapped on there anyway. And that is my main concern, is that you can't point to any major accomplishment that she has. She just can't be waiting in place. If I were a Democrat, I'd roll the dice a long time ago. I would have gotten rid of Biden and Harris, probably lost in 2024, but rebuilt a party that has nothing to do with either of them.
Well, to that point, and this is interesting, Harris. So, you know, you've had Republicans saying, how can they let Joe Biden be the nominee? I mean, that's essentially ensuring a loss. But this is Jonathan Martin at Politico. Get used to it. Biden isn't going anywhere. The Republican refrain goes something like this. Democrats know Joe Biden can't win in November, and they say it's always they are going to replace the man at the top of the ticket. On Sunday, even Nikki Haley, ostensibly the GOP's team normal candidate, those are his words, put down her cash at the window. My bet is 30 days from now, I don't think Joe Biden's going to be the nominee. Haley told supporters she and other Republicans are about to look as bad as those who took the 49ers.
Jeez.
Whoa. Okay. I think the president showed us a little bit of maybe what would be going on behind the scenes when he was with the King of Jordan yesterday. And fictitiously, and I guess whole cloth imagined, that Barack Obama was standing in the corner and that the king should look over and see Barack Obama tacitly saying he's still running things. I mean, that's what I gathered from that moment. It wasn't just the confusion about where he should stand and all of that with the King Jordan, like, looking around, you know, what's going on. It was the fact that Biden actually said the quiet part out loud. I mean, Obama and other people with access to the White House might still have that access. So you won't just totally get Kamala. You'll still get him. He'll still be probably much like he is now. Let's pray he doesn't deteriorate to the point where he forgets more and sees more people who are not actually there. And I sincerely mean that. That's not good for the country. But we need now to know who's running things. Like, I think it's, and I say that every day, the reason that it's important is our politics are not changing. If the policies are not changing, why is that from a man who can't remember what he did 10 days ago? Why is that? That may be because it's the same people behind the scenes.
Yeah, and look, it may be Machiavellian, but contrary to Jonathan Martin's assertion, look, one big fall, I do think, he says there's no smoky room where they can put Biden aside. One big fall, one thing happens. I don't see how they let him go forward as the nominee. And yes, I say they, because there are delegates, there are those at the convention who could move him aside.
Yes, and I think that, to me, you articulated what I find so absolutely disheartening about this, is that, in a way, you know, it's not the president's fault that he's incompetent and a facsimile of who he used to be. It's not... But I'm going to interrupt myself to say this. My biggest gripe about him is the fact that people who prop him up and say that his experience is what is so valuable about him. What is experience if you can't remember it? He has no memory of anything. And therefore, it's the same thing as putting in Dory from Finding Nemo. And the second point is that everyone else, all of those talking heads you see up there and his entire cabinet, everyone propping him up, are so much more to blame because they know exactly what they are covering for. But what frightens me more than anything in life, including the vice president, Kamala Harris, actually being president, is what would instantly happen if he was moved out of the way. As Phil Klein wrote for the National Review, what would happen is she would go in a heartbeat from a sideshow that just rambles on, word salad, totally incompetent, to the first female president. And the musical celebration of her from the mainstream media would reach saturation levels. And all of a sudden, that's all you would need to know, is the first female president, African-American female, and it's her against Trump. And all of her incompetence, her failures, her not showing up, everything that's in the vessel of nothing. Glossed over. Yeah. That is my worst nightmare.
I can hear the soundtrack from Broadway just playing right now.
Right. And Ellen DeGeneres played Dory, right?
President Kamala Harris. What an interesting prospect, and a frightening one at that.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.